Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is your brother, Muslim Comedy OG, Preacher Moss. I'm here to tell you that the Muslim Comedy Tour, the Super Muslim Comedy Tour, is sponsored by Penny Appeal. This thing is going to be the joint. You're talking about Preacher Moss. We're talking about epic artists. You're talking about the ShOUT Show, reporting live from the road. I'm the host of the ShOUT Show, by the way. Listen, this is going to be amazing. We're all doing it for an incredible cause. Right now, the people of Pakistan need you. You've been seeing it in the radio and the press. They're dealing with floods, massive floods that displace plenty of people. Listen, come out. Now, I know we got a lot of artists on here. I love them all. Let me tell you something. You've been rocking with me, Preacher Moss, the OG Muslim Comedy, since 2004. This is 18 years we've been doing this thing. We have a relationship. So come out and laugh. Come out, let's do Allah's work. Let's come out and support these brothers and sisters that need our help. Make sure you get your tickets. The streets are talking, and they're talking about you coming to the show. I'm Preacher Moss. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Super Muslim Comedy Show. I think I did that right. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is Preacher Moss reporting from the Park Royal Hotel where they don't have any lamps. How about that? Thought I'd just throw that out there. No, I am still in London. This is the day before we kick off our tour. Our first show is at Wembley, and we're going to be in East London on Saturday, and then we will take our show on the road. We will be doing another 8 cities around the country of the UK. It's touching in Scotland, thank goodness, and we're also going to be touching Birmingham, Manchester, Bradford, Blackburn. I mean, we got a lot of cities that we're going to be going to. Today marked something really, really interesting while I was here in the UK. The Prime Minister Truss, a woman conservative, actually resigned from being a prime minister. She has the distinction of having the shortest tenure as a prime minister in the history of the UK. What it comes from is that she had epic failure as a leader in the country, and the mandate was so strong for her to leave that they basically made her resign or get fired, or cause the Conservative Party to lose massively in the upcoming elections. It was interesting. I mean, literally, I believe this woman's resignation speech was longer than her tenure. And I began to start thinking about this because we look at it so much in a local capacity. We say, wow, this is so interesting. And we think about it. And I was like, what are some of the ramifications when our leadership fails? We also do a lot of talking about leadership, how it doesn't work. But what is it when it fails? It's like, do we have a plan to make sure that we're okay, that our families are okay, our communities are okay? And so I thought today would be pretty interesting because we're seeing epic failures in terms of leadership all around us. And I decided not to just take it from the political standpoint, also look at it, some of my own personal stories where I had epic failures of leadership. Things I thought I was doing well, I was not doing well. Things I thought that were going to work out, I had forecasted, I was incorrect. And it has so much to do with, when you have these moments, it has so much to do with, am I humble enough to say that I made a mistake? Am I humble enough to say I made a mistake? And am I going to be fortunate enough to be able to make a pivot? Because when you deal with leadership, it's not a one-way street. They say when leadership fails, you have to come back this way. You're facing the people that you were leading. And you have to make a case as to whether you still deserve to lead these people, whether it is you're telling them these are the mistakes, this is how we correct them. If it's a promise that's been broken, are you able to say that? Here in the UK, because the political system is the way it is, it's really, really interesting because there's an aggressive process about how you do politics. Boris Johnson was the prime minister for a number of years. He left, he resigned. He's actually talking about running again to be the next prime minister. He just left the position. I think about this all the time because U.S. politics, we had of course, 45, President Trump, who trumpeted a lot of changes that went over here here in the UK, speaking specifically about Brexit. And this guy, um, he piloted a lot of the attitude and the behavior that you're seeing in UK politics. That aside, it's really easy from a spectator point of view to start talking about leadership of other people. A lot of times we're not talking about our own leadership, which oftentimes having solid leadership in your family, in your community, in your mosque, in your business, these are the things that help you champion through. So we're going to be talking about that here on the UK, here on the Shout Out Show, live from the UK. All right, let's roll. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Preacher Maz in the UK. All right, we're back. We're back. I got passports waiting to get stamped here in the here on the Shout Out Show in the comment section. Our Shout Out Show stars. I took you with me to the UK. You didn't have to pull out your passport. However, I got to shout you out because we don't know who's watching in the UK, and I want people to know I have a special group of people that come here to the Shout Out Show. For those that are watching in the UK, these are our Shout Out Show family. Pay attention. You don't want to miss them. We're going to give a shout out. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sister Reed, all the way from Houston, Texas, who always tunes in, one of our day ones, always making sure that your brother Preacher Mars is well fed and she takes care of me. She looked out for my family. God bless you. Hope you and yours are doing well, Brother Derek and Brother Jawan. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, wa alaikum assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sister Ika coming in all the way from Melbourne, way down under. Hope that you're doing well and you're having a blessed day. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, my main man, Altar for She, better known as Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, a Canadian, and I keep demoting you. I'm sorry, brother. You are a Canadian envoy to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Wa alaikum assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace and blessings to your family. Make sure that you give them the greeting from myself and Sister Satana Whitfield. Next up, what's the show without my little brother, Johnny L. Thomas, better known as JT? Wa alaikum assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, little Ak. Thank you so much, man. I just want to let you know I landed safely in the UK. Everything's going well. Health is good. I'm ready to do these 10 shows and come back on across the pond. I'm geared up and I'm inspired. I want to also give a shout out to Islam Channel. We had some interviews at Islam Channel. They were very gracious towards me. Thank you so much. I've been here a lot of times and they've always treated me well. So big up to Islam Channel. Next up, what's the show without our executive producer? That would be Sister Satana Whitfield. What is the show without Sister Satana? Pretty bad. No, I'm just kidding. No, Sister Satana, like I said, has been holding it down. Our executive producer for the Shout Out Show. Thank you so much, Sister Satana, for rolling with me here in the UK. So I'm going to go ahead and move on from this point. Addressing when leadership fails. I'm going to give it to you from two perspectives. One is a global perspective about leadership. That's one. And number two, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rubric of how I came to understand leadership from being young. Most of us understand leadership, particularly in the minority communities. We understand leadership because it has to be a certain type of position for our families and for our communities to really be effective. Whether it's through church, whether through local politics, we have to have a rubric to understand that the politicians or people that we vote for, they have to be close, very, very close and connected to what the ideals and the needs of the community are. We watch it in our families. We watch the efficiency of our mothers and watch the efficiency of our fathers. And we look at that leadership, and that's a very, very organic type of leadership. Oftentimes, we don't understand that that is the leadership that we actually follow. Pursuant to anything you may see out in politics, Congress, Senate, we organically really respond to the leadership that we see in front of us, which is the leadership from our parents. So a lot of times we're not learning leadership once we become adults because we're not speaking to people who have led us. Hear what I'm saying? We're not speaking to people who led us. We're speaking to people who want to lead us. We don't necessarily have the nomenclature of how we grew up, what our values are, what our core values are. And it becomes in this political hodgepodge whereby through voting, we feel like we are represented. That is a point that I have to bring up because I have to say there is a certain, how can I say this? Oh, my brother. Assalamu alaikum assalam to brother Eric. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you're doing, brother. Hope you're doing well. But the point is, when we are children and we are teenagers, we want to be led. We want to be led. We want to find people who, by default, care about us, know about our situation, and can lead effectively. That's why when I say when leadership fails, it's interesting because we're looking the wrong way at leadership. One of the greatest examples I ever saw of leadership, and it's not talked about enough or it's not exposed enough, probably comes from me from the Nation of Islam. And I'm not talking about the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm talking about the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he was arrested and he was in prison for 5 years for sedition. I'm talking about the leadership of his wife, Sister Clara Muhammad, who essentially kept the Nation of Islam going. And she did it without a lot of men. She did it with a core of women who were very, very in tune to what this situation, what this community was supposed to look like moving forward. She doesn't get enough credit. Even if she gets enough credit, she doesn't get enough credit. This is a yeoman effort. And I'm talking about when leadership fails. There was no leadership, male leadership for the Nation of Islam. How did they succeed? They succeed by the fact that they were, one, organic, understanding the needs of the people. Number two, and I have to say this, they mastered the scope of the pivot. Meaning they were able to move away from a situation and say, we're not going to be able to effectively be led by this person, but there's a core point or core points they're going to be able to engage that will keep people involved. And that had to do with education. That also had to do with having people self-identify, not as Black, but self-identify as excellent. And the third one, which I think is really important, is to put a numerology, if you will, for religious impetus in what they did. The idea of being able to say, I'm great because of this. I'm great because of this religion. I'm great because I've had a conversation, a relationship with God. It makes it easier for me to do these things. In the communal sense, it's a beautiful thing. Now, I started out talking about the Prime Minister resigning here in the UK. It's really big news. I mean, it is huge news over here. You're talking about having to have elections before Christmas for a new Prime Minister. This country that I'm in, they're in serious trouble. And I'm telling you they're in serious trouble because right across the pond, we're right behind them. They're having issues with being able to feed children. They're having issues about being able to get through the winter because the electricity bills are going to go from like $1,500 to almost $5,000 just to be able to do heating bills. They're talking about the fact that the pound is down against the dollar. I mean, it's almost trading even. They're also talking about the fact that the effect of Brexit has made their trading position that they have for so long here in Europe, it's now borderline ineffective. They can't get the supplies that they need. And coming out of COVID, which is very important because they got another COVID epidemic come over here. What it is that they look at the fact that the economy through COVID and the economy through the fact that they have not been able to plan effectively and pivot for things such as Brexit not working, they now find themselves in a crisis. I think all of us should take notice of this because in the United States, we are on a daily basis experiencing crisis of leadership, and we are engaging over and over and over in failed leadership. It's not enough to vote for you can't vote for the person that you think is going to hurt you the least. And you can't vote for the person that's like default. We have priorities, we have demands, we have things that we think are necessary to our existence, our development, and our success. When we deal with these failures in leadership, two things happen. Number one, you're not getting to the part that's important for you. What I found, and I could be wrong, Satana, you can jump in if you want to. What I found is when we have failures in leadership, we are somehow consumed with somehow trying to correct the failures of that leadership. It can't correct itself. In many cases, I feel personally that a majority of people are disabused into thinking that this is all of our mess. That somehow if leadership fails, it has more to do about the people than the people that were leading us. And therefore the impetus is not properly applied where it needs to be applied. And therefore, these people actually get to stay in office longer. It's almost like magic. It's almost like, hey, don't believe what you see. It's not this. If you are looking at current things, you can actually watch politicians switch their positions on things that are vitally important. Whether it's abortion, whether it's the election is fake, you have a record number of people running for Congress out of the GOP who still say that the election was not valid. Which is to say, I don't believe in democracy so much, I'm going to run for political office and hope that democracy works for me. Two things I'm going to say about the upcoming midterm elections. It's not about you. This is a particular mandate to find out what kind of threshold we are going to give these people to continue to oppress us. What kind of threshold are we going to give these people to continue to make us or play us small? What kind of threshold are we going to give these people whereby they're going to continue to take and take and take? They don't have anything to take from themselves. They don't have anything to take from themselves. What they can take is your liberty. What they can take is your opportunity. What they can take is an opportunity to shape your capacity. I'm saying this because this is something that goes back to 2016. And we were saying this on the street corners about Donald Trump. It's sad when pimps have a better political ideology understanding Donald Trump than people who are political consultants. Because the pimp can tell you that he has no game. And a person who has no game has no credibility. They have no respect. The way they get respect is to take it from you, to somehow change your perspective, to get you the pivot when they need to be pivoting. It's interesting because when you back somebody into a wall, they have no way to go forward. These people will have you open the door for them to go and commit even more foolishness on a steady basis. The political process right now is not the political process. I talk about addressing when leadership fails. Let me tell you something. The first thing I employ when I fail in my leadership is number one, I step back, and number two, I'm humble. I want to hear from the people who I've affected, whether I affected you in a negative way or positive way. I just want to hear it. However unfiltered you want to give it to me, I need that because effective leadership requires raw data that you have to have. You have to have a response from people. You have to have their feelings in terms of what things are going on and what's working. in some of our masjids and some of our churches, leadership doesn't work because the people in the hired folks, they only listen to one another. They don't listen to the people that they serve. Two, when you're addressing leadership or when leadership fails in your own personal space, how do you want to fail? Let me ask the question again. How do you want to fail? Do you want to fail quickly or do you want to fail with resistance? Failing with resistance is, I know I'm wrong, it's not working, but I don't care. Because I'm the leader, I can hold on to these reins of power because whatever, I can continue to act this way because who else is going to take it from me? And in other world orders, you'll find that people have coups and juntas and all that type of stuff. But in a democratic system, we know that. We know that this system does not work. This is probably nothing that's a surprise to you folks. But the vote for the African American, vote for people of color over the years has diminished. The thing that's allowed African Americans and people of color to flourish in this country is that they moved away from the vote. And you know what they did? They became capitalists. They said, I'm going to go get the bag. You go get the office. I'm going to get the bag. And when I say get in the bag, this is definitely a throw up to my dear mentor, Mr. Dick Gregory, who said that these people are not going to listen to you until you have money. Until you have money that they can account for. Listen to what I'm saying. Until you have money they can account for. And when I say they can't account for it, they just can't come take it from you. They can't rob you. Even if they take the money, they're still baffled and bedazzled by the fact that you got it in the first place. They don't know how you got your money. It's just like spirituality. They don't know how you got your spirituality. And when you put it out there like that, the leadership will come to you. The leadership will come to you. Look at common politics right now. Well, I'm running a little over, but keep the idea about the leadership coming to you. We'll be right back here on the ShOUT Show. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear? I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, we're back. Shout out to Convenient Urgent Care doing their thing. They need Convenient Urgent Care over here because they had a outbreak, COVID outbreak that's coming out. So I'm just throwing that out there. Listen, I want to backtrack a little bit when I was talking about leadership, when leadership fails. One of the things I do definitely employ is the fact that you want to be humble. because when you're serving people, that's the way that you're supposed to be in the first place. So there's really no drop off. When something works, you're humble when it works, you're humble when it doesn't work. That's number one. Number two is humility. I didn't bring up humility. Humility means that you have to be willing to listen to the people that you serve, whether you're successful or you're a failure. You have to be able to have that mechanism, because when leadership fails, people look at you in the context of how you react, how you reframe leadership, and then they choose between the fact of they choose whether they literally want to have you lead them or keep you in that place. Sometimes they evaluate, are you really the right person for that position? And at the same time that they're doing that, you need to be evaluated whether you're the right person for that position also. When I had this great conversation with Mr. Dick Gregory about political action committees, he said the reason why Black folk need a political action committee because we have to stress test our leadership before we put it out in the mainstream. And I was like, what? He goes, we need to work out the kinks in Black leadership, Black theology, Black existence before we put it out in the mainstream. And I didn't really totally understand what he was talking about until a couple years ago. And I'm watching the Georgia race. We're talking about the Georgia race. And he said, if you don't do that, he said, then people will be more than happy to give you a Herschel Walker. People will be more happy to give you a Raphael Warnock. Because as much as you got Herschel Walker and Warnock, they're still going to have to serve the overall white collective, whether they're elected or not. We went bonkers when Barack Obama was elected president, but it was people like Cornel West. It was people like Tavis Smiley. It was people like Dick Gregory. It was people like the Minister Farrakhan that said, don't throw all this confetti in the air. They're politicians. We didn't necessarily say they were leaders. The big difference between being a politician and a leader. He said, and the thing is, when they are politicians and we mistake them for leaders, we don't understand that they work in their own class structure, in their own closed environment, and we're not a part of that environment. Therefore, we have to stress test our leaders. We have to make sure that when they go up that hill to the Senate or the Congress, or we put them on our boards, or we put them in our churches and our mosque, we need to know that we've seen that person under pressure. So I just want that to resonate for a little bit. So when I talk about when our leadership fails, when it fails, you know what you have to do? You gotta stress test it. You don't put it back out there again. It's like when a car is running a race and you push it all the way in the car, the engine explodes or blows up. When they take it in to look at it, they take the engine apart. They figure out what was the weak part of the engine. And then they make a new engine and then they test it again. That requires patience. That requires a different type of intellect. That requires a different type of intelligence than what we've been putting out here before. Because right now, who are people listening to in Black leadership? Herschel Walker and Kanye West. Argue with me if you want to. But those are the people who are taking up space. You're not hearing about Stacey Abrams. You're not hearing about Raphael Warnock. You're hearing about a guy who's talking about white lives matter. And let me throw this out too. I'm not one to say that Kanye West is crazy. I'm not one to say that he's off. If you listen to him, he has some very lucid conversations, but I realize that even his stuff is being cut up and thrown out for the masses to digest. I'm not saying that he's right, but check this out, whether you want to believe it or not. He has framed himself as a leader. And many of us have a lot of problems with that because he has been stress tested. He's stressed now, but he has been stress tested. So listen, that's our show. We'll be back on Monday. I don't know what time, Satana, I don't know what time I'm going to be from being. This is the UK. But Monday, I think we're going to be in maybe Birmingham or Glasgow or something like that, or Blackburn. But until that time, family, I just want you guys to know I'm making dua for all of you. You're getting the duas of the traveler. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Preacher Moss live from the UK. Inshallah, I will see you on Monday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.